If you were talking to a younger version of yourself, besides getting the second opinion and always making sure that you at least get two opinions, make sure you put yourself first. If someone was considering regenerative medicine using a technology like the PDPAs, what would you tell them?
If I were going to tell them something about the medicine, I'd say that you have to work with it. It's not something that it's like a overnight pill that you take and it's just going to fix everything. It works in time. So when I first started using the regenerative medicine myself, the very first thing I started noticing was a speed in recovery as far as healing. If I had a cut or a bruise or something, like it would heal quicker than it would had I not had the medicine in my system. And I noticed that within a month. As far as long term, you'd have to work with it as far as being in therapy or being in the gym, whatever the case may be that you're working around to get back to your normal health. It's a system that works within a system. So like your body is its own system, but this medicine is a system within itself that comes into your body and pretty much recreates it in a way that it makes you stronger, more healthy. It does add more years to your life. I haven't been able to experience that on my own because I've only been using it for a few years now, but it has made a change on my health in a spectacular way. I'm just blessed to be able to use it.
All right, welcome to the Medical Entrepreneur Podcast. We have a very special guest with us. We have Dylan Moses. Dylan, we're so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. And there's so many questions I have for you. Just very lucky to have you here, a man of such dedication and focus.
Thank you for having me.
Oh man, my pleasure. So many things I want to ask you, but maybe so everybody gets cued into all the stuff that you've done, could you maybe tell a little bit about your story, how you got into football, these kind of things?
First and foremost, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Grew up in that small town, and I was always family oriented. My father and my uncles surrounded me. They all played football, and so they were a huge influence on as far as what I wanted to do growing up. And seeing them excel at it was something I always saw for myself. I grew older. That's what I started doing. I started playing Little League football in Baton Rouge, and back then in like early 2000s, all the way to like the mid, it was always like a big thing. I'm not sure if it's still a big thing now, but families and kids would all gather together to come and watch the games. Yeah, I used to be like real big with doing that growing up. Was like a hometown celebrity in a way because I was so good at it. And at the time, it was like just a natural thing. Me having a love for the sport. I still have the love for the sport to this day. And as I got older, like I said, I didn't realize I was really good until maybe I was 14. I could say I knew that when I was a kid, but still I'm playing against regular kids around the city. But yeah, I didn't know I was good till I was 14. I got recognized at a young age. Got my first scholarship offer when I was in the 8th grade from LSU. That blew up. What else? My second scholarship offer was from Alabama the same year. And after that, offer just kept pouring in from 8th grade all the way until my senior year. My junior year, I was the number one player in the country. And then I started off number one and then finished number 5 overall in 2017. Ended up going to IMG Academy my senior year of high school, graduated early, and then ended up enrolling in Alabama in January of 2017. To be honest, I'm not going to lie. As I look back on it, I do feel like my younger years of being like a football player and traveling across the world and just being around my family, it was very fast. Like my childhood passed by fast. But not only that, it was a lot of hard work, dedication, things that I had no idea I would have to do in order to get onto that level. And I just remember when I very first started, my dad, he told me, because like he didn't originally want me to play football. And I literally had to beg him. And I was like, I want to play. And he was like, all right, well, if you're going to play, you're going to be the best at it. And at the time, I didn't know what that meant. And man, he used to work me, man, like up at 6 a.m. Mind you, I'm in like probably 2nd or 3rd grade doing this. And on my summers was like full of training. I never really got to go anywhere. Either I was running track or I was preparing for football. So either or, I was always doing something. So I was never really that kid that just sat in the house all day. And yeah, that's what made time pass by fast. And that's what made me into the man I am today as far as being able to handle adversity, having the mindset of just being able to persevere through challenges and life-changing things, because life happens all the time. You just got to be able to have the mental toughness to be able to get through it. And a lot of the things that I faced as a kid allowed me to be able to mold my mind into being able to withstand and endure all of the things that life can throw at you. Yeah, man, my freshman year at college, it was nice at Alabama. They already had like great guys on the team. We went to the Natty that year. I started at linebacker towards the end of the season. I didn't get to finish the season. I ended up getting hurt, and we ended up winning though. So came back 2018. I think we went undefeated again and lost in the Natty that year as well. But what else I wanted to say? That year, I ended up making the All-American team. And then I also was like a runner-up for the Buckets Award. That's one of the most prestigious awards for a linebacker. Mind you, I was only a sophomore, so the sky was the limit at that point. And my junior year, I always say that year is special because I felt like I put in so much work, not only physically and on the field, but mentally to evolve myself into a better person. I just knew that year was going to be my year. And so, mind you, throughout my entire life, it was always an upward projection. Like I just knew what was next or what was coming, only to find out mid-year in 2019, I ended up tearing my ACL. And that was a huge bummer. It was a big thing that just shattered my hopes and dreams because I never thought that something like that would happen to me. I never had a season-ending injury, much less an injury where I'd have to have like surgery or something like that. Yeah, that ended my year. We didn't even make it into the playoffs that year. And the following year was COVID. So 2020 was even worse because I was I don't want to say, yeah, probably towards the end of my recovery, like whenever I tore my ACL in 2019. And then when 2020 came, when March of that year, it basically shut everything down, shut everything off as far as like my rehabilitation. And I also just had to wait till I could be able to get my resources back again as far as like getting back to school. And that in itself was just tough because with everything being closed down and the facilities being shut down, I really had nowhere to be able to get my training in and nowhere to finish my rehab. So it was like a stalemate in a sense. And throughout that time period, when I look back on it, I didn't really, like I worked out, but I didn't really take care of myself as much. I wasn't really mentally there, but I don't think anybody was mentally there though, to be honest. Like whether you're just a regular working citizen or just an athlete that's in school or anybody, because you don't know what's coming next. And so we ended up coming back to school, I believe like June or July. And during that time, we were having period workouts and our coaches, I was able to get back on my routine as far as, what I was doing for rehab to get my knee back stronger. And by the time the season came to a close or came near, I was able to basically get my knee back to a point where I was able to run without feeling any pain. And I was basically back in my peak performance. What I want to say, September 26th, that was our first game back in 2020. And I actually felt my best. I was like, I was feeling it. Mind you, I haven't played like in a game since like 2018. Yeah, I was playing pretty good, man. Like going through the first few games of the season, my body, like I said, wasn't really up to speed at that point. And I remember in the beginning of the season, like I experienced some type of knee pain. I checked it out with my team doctors at the time, and they said it was a bone bruise. Something, you know what? I had a bone bruise before. That's going to go away. I'm not worried about it. As weeks go by, I started noticing that it's starting to get worse and worse. And the way Alabama was that year, like we needed someone on our team that was going to be a leader because if we didn't, we were going to lose, especially on the defensive side. That year, I was just like biting the bullet, and they had to like really change up my entire schedule as far as what I would do and what I'm not going to do. So throughout the week, from like Monday to Thursday, normally those days we would be in pads. Or I'm lying. Monday would be shells, shells, and then not shells, but soft shells. Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday would be pads, and Friday would just be walkthrough before the game. So from Tuesday to Thursday, I'm not practicing majority of the practices. I'm pretty much sitting on the sideline while they're doing team, like one-on-ones and stuff. And then once we get to the point where we're doing, what's it called? Like scout drill. Scout is whenever you're going against the scout team and they're showing you what the opposing team is doing. So that's the only time that I would practice. I was doing that all throughout the week. And after every game on Sunday, I'd have to drive to Birmingham with my trainers, and I'd have to pull, man, loads of fluid out of my knee because it was swollen after the game. So the most I
Wow.
ever had to pull out of my knee was maybe 60 cc's. And that was so painful, man. And it was just crazy because I've never had to endure that type of pain. It got to the point where I really started resenting everyone at the facility. Even though I've always had love for those people, even though I always had love for football, like I even started resenting football. Like I literally said it during the game. I was like, man, I hate this. Like I genuinely hate this. And my coach almost caught what I said. He was like, what you said? I was like, nothing, don't worry about it. And yeah, man, that was like one of the worst and most painful I've felt throughout that year. And seeing on Twitter or like social media, people saying, oh, he's not playing well or he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, or NFL coaches telling me that my character is off or they don't know if I'm hungry enough. And I'm like, man, it's like they're demonizing my character. They don't even know who I am. They don't even know what I've been through. And it's almost like I'm being put in this narrative where I'm just lazy. This guy thought he was going to leave in 3 years. So his last year he came in and just lollygagged and didn't put forth effort. Like I've seen guys do that. But in my case, I've never wanted to be like that. I've never would even imagine myself doing something like that. Yeah, it got me like egotistical in a way. My ego when it came to just like, man, these people really don't know who I am. Am I tripping? Like, this can't be real life. So, yeah, as time went by, it got me upset. And that year was just bad, man. Towards the end of the year, we ended up winning a natty and everything. And I was even the leading guy for the tackles or leading player on defense for the tackles. But I ended up seeing who it was, Dr. Andrews. Yeah, Dr. Andrews in Pensacola right after the season. And he did a scope on my knee and he was like, yeah, Dylan, your knee is bone to bone. And there's no tissue there for your cartilage. And I was like, wow, really? And then I basically told him the same thing I told you as far as the schedule they had me on and the amount of fluid they were pulling out. He was like, yeah, so whenever we do this surgery, it's not really much I can do but clean it out and take all the debris out. And that's pretty much it. I remember walking around, I was limping everywhere. And I remember my agent at the time, he was telling me, we don't want you walking in front of these teams like that because they're going to be thinking something is truly wrong with you. But I'm thinking to myself, it really is something wrong because I've never not had a meniscus in my life before. Like I've never felt this before. So it was honestly it was a shit show, to be honest. And I remember just going to where it was, Indianapolis, being asked all these questions, being tugged on by the doctors. And it was word around saying that I would never be able to play again. Like my knee is like the knee of a 90-year-old man. And fast forward to the draft, man, that was probably the most hurtful or most painful thing that I've ever had to experience because after working so hard from a child to a teenager to an adult and then getting to the point where you're at the door of your dreams and then you're not being able to live it how you expected it to. That was heart crushing. And to see every guy that I've ever grew up seeing or being on the same field with at camps or whatever going before me. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. I'm just like, it's almost like a bad dream. And whenever the draft was over, I just was so depressed, man. I was so down in myself. The Jaguars ended up giving me an undrafted free agent contract after the math of, I don't know how I said it, for the aftermath of the draft. And yeah, they called my agent and let him know. And I was excited. I was just excited to be a part of a team. And that entire year was crazy in itself. Because like I said, I didn't really get to play. I was just there, did rehab the entire year. And that's pretty much it. And so I went to the games, but besides that, I didn't really do much. And that was Coach Urban Meyer's first year. They had everything was new, a new staff, everything. And the team in itself, man, that was just a crazy experience because I've always been a part of a winning culture. And then seeing like how everyone orchestrated their days and how just toxic it was towards the end of the season, it was just like, man, I've never been a part of something like that before. And the people, like, don't get me wrong, the people were nice, but it's just when you're losing that much, like I've never been a part of a 2-14 team, or it was like 3-13. I don't know. It was something along those lines, man. It was crazy. And just like towards the end of the season, it just seemed like people were just looking for people to blame. And because we were losing, and then people knew their jobs were in jeopardy towards the end. So that's where it got toxic at. Yeah, throughout that year, I just did what I could, rehabbed, and that was pretty much it. The following year, in 2020, I had got released from the Jaguars. So that was in probably April, maybe May. Actually, no, it might have been April. Yeah, I was released around that time. And then not even a few weeks later, before I even get to that point, at that point, that was really like a point where I was like, my back was against the wall. And I always was like very strong and had just a hopeful mind that something good will come out of whatever I'm doing. And so like when my back was against the wall, I remember just looking up at the sky. I was like, God, man, I did everything that you wanted me to do. I worked hard. I did everything by the book. I've showed up early, was always left late. I never crossed anybody, never did anybody wrong. But I see people that's pretty much at the point that I want to be at that have not done everything that I've done. And I'm like, at this point, what do you want from me? I'm not understanding what was the point of this great buildup in the beginning of my life and everything being on a positive trajectory. And then next thing you know, everything just goes to shit pretty much. So I was just like, yeah, I don't know what you want me to do. It was like, so at this point, I'm just weighing my options. And then a few weeks later, so this guy named David Bell, his wife reached out to me through Facebook. Mind you, I don't normally get on Facebook, but she reached out through Messenger. And I didn't know who he was at the time. And I didn't know who she was. And I was just living a random day I think I was in Alexandria. I was in my grandparents' house. And I looked at my Messenger app, and then I saw a DM from his wife, and she was saying, hey, my husband is he's a bioscientist, and he does regenerative cells. And he could possibly work with you and help you get you back to your peak performance. And so I was like, I didn't know what that was, but I was like, man, you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and do it. I don't have anything else at this point that I can like actually put my faith in that can help me. And this is one thing that just came up out the blue that just was like heaven sent in a sense. And it's crazy because I remember whenever I got cut in the first place, I just remember me and my girlfriend was talking about it. And she was like, man, we're in 2022. There has to be something out there that can help you regrow your cartilage. Like, there's no way. There has to be a way. And so when she said that, I was just keeping my hope, and he was like, I'm going to continue pursuing football, because at that time I was really thinking about quitting. But yeah, I ended up meeting up with David in Fort Worth. I believe it might have been in May. It probably was in May, like our first meeting. And I had my first injection. He told me what the regenerative medicine was, how it can help me, and to pretty much just update him each month, like on how I feel. And a few meetings later, like on the third or fourth meeting, he decides to ask me. He was like, Dylan, we know you spoke to us about this as far as whenever you're playing football, you don't have to worry about finances. And he was like, if you come work with us, you won't ever have to work a day in your life. You won't even have to play football. You'll make more doing what you're doing with us than ever having to do on the football field. And I was like, man, you know what? Let me go ahead and partner with these people. He wanted me to pretty much just be a brand ambassador for the product, and for me to be pretty much like a face to lead other athletes in and be able to help them later on down the road. So I was doing that throughout that time period. I was flying back and forth from Louisiana to Dallas. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be working with these people, why not just move to Texas? I was like, what's the worst that can happen? And the crazy thing about it is I'm the type of person, I don't mind taking calculated risk. If it's something that can potentially help or potentially change my life, or even something that can make me somewhat successful, I'm going to do it. Like, regardless if it sounds crazy or not. So I packed up all my stuff and decided to move to Dallas. I stayed out there from 2022 to now, really. So I've been out here for almost 2 years, and my relationship with David and his wife, Brandy, that pretty much changed my life, man. I've been through a lot throughout those years, but the past 2 years has really been like a big change in my body, though, because when you're dealing with a knee injury as significant as mine, I was limping everywhere. So my knee, in turn, like, it made my body out of alignment. I've never been bow-legged. So this made my right leg very bowed out. And I had to go to pretty much a doctor out here, one of David's friends. His name is Dr. Rob. I was seeing him over the course of 2 years, and I was going to get readjusted and realigned with him because he's a chiropractor, but he also specializes in other things as well, which makes him very versatile. And yeah, like when I was realigning, going with him to go and realign, I was also training. And he was like, yeah, man, you're going to get back on track. Your body's going to get back to where it needs to be. You just have to keep working hard. So over those 2 years, my knee straightened back up. I kept doing the regenerative medicine with David and got the cartilage in my knee grew back. You could still tell that my knee has been worked on, but as far as the cartilage and stuff, it's cartilage there now because before it wasn't. And so I went from having pain that was levels on the scale from 1 to 10, a 10 every day, to not feeling pain at all, being able to run, being able to change direction. It's crazy, man. It's really like a big blessing that I didn't see coming. I don't know what's ahead of me. I don't know where God is guiding me, but at the same time, I do have a strong faith and I'm heading in the right direction. And regardless of whatever happens, it's always for the good.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Mm-hmm. And then would you say that basically would you feel like your knee has been, it sounds like to me that basically the orthopedic surgeon at Andrews told you like, hey, look, there's really no cartilage there, which would explain like 60 cc's coming out of your knee. That's huge. I just pulled up the calculations. That's 12 teaspoons of liquid coming out of your knee.
It was terrible.
Your knee, that means like your knee had no buffer. So it's literally pumping in liquid as fast as it can just to act as a buffer because there's nothing there because you're just grinding. So the pain, I can only imagine, was horrible. And then now you have a knee that essentially is back. Have you been able to perform at the same level as you did before?
Yes. So see, this is the trick. So like majority of the time from 2 years ago to now, I've just been training to keep my body in shape and also strengthen my knee. With me having that time to be able to do that, it's gotten me to the point where I'm able to perform on the field from like the last game I've played, which was like in 2021. The only thing that's really just slowed me down up to this point is the fact that I haven't been on the field in so long. But at the same time, like I've been playing football all my life. That's something that was kind of like knowing the back of my hand pretty much.
Absolutely. So what a change though. So basically through these regenerative treatments, how many treatments do you think that you had all in all?
I've had 10 from 2022 to now, but I've also had maintenance treatments as well, because as you continue to work out, you're going to continue to wear down your meniscus. So I have maintenance treatments in between those times from last year to now to basically keep up the growth process. But yeah, man, I would not be here where I am today if it wasn't for David and his wife. And I can't thank them enough because they truly have changed my life. The crazy thing about this is I was just talking to someone else about this the other day. I've always been successful throughout my life, or just had some type of like, I'll work so hard, like you'll be able to see what you work for. But just being where I am today is, I don't want to say humbling because I've always been humble, but it truly has been humbling because I've never been overlooked. I've never been second guessed. I've always passed the eye test, but it's just being on this opposite side, I'm able to see both sides now. So it's just crazy at the end of the day.
Man. And then my understanding is that your performance was so good that you're able to also sign up with the Memphis Showboats. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Awesome. So, I mean, you must have performed at such a high level that, they were interested in signing you.
Oh, yeah, I did. And it was crazy because when they signed me, it was back in, I believe, November. And I was excited for that opportunity because I haven't touched the football field in forever. Not only that, they were a part of the USFL, and they merged with the XFL recently. The GM and the coach that I talked to at that time, they weren't the same people because they pretty much cleaned out house. They brought in new coaches and new staff, and they really had to redraft everyone and keep people on the team that they initially wanted. And yeah, recently, man, I was with them. Me personally, I didn't know how the league worked. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the ins and outs. All I knew is that they were having a draft, I believe, in the beginning of February, and they were basically picking from the pool of guys within that league and the pool of guys that were already on the team and just saying who they wanted to keep and who they didn't want to keep. I ended up being one of those people they wanted to keep. I went into that situation thinking that But that was like the last step before actually getting to where I wanted to be. Because obviously I worked so hard to get to that point and being able to run and do everything I needed to do. But it was really like that entire situation was just, it was really like I had no way of succeeding in that situation, even if I wanted to. And the only reason I say that is because I went there. It only took them 2 weeks to evaluate on who they want and who they didn't want. Mind you, this is supposed to be camp. A normal camp isn't like that. A normal camp lasts from an entire month. So if you're in college, you have a month plus probably the off season to be able to prepare and know who's going to be on the team or to start or whatever. And even in the NFL, you just have a month for that entire, I want to say the entire fall camp to be able to know who you're going to want on the team, who you're not going to want on the team, who you're going to cut, who you're going to keep. And you'll have games throughout that time period that'll let you see who you want or evaluate who you want to keep on the team and who you don't. With the UFL, it was completely different. So they had 2 weeks where they were evaluating, and before we came in, they had like already a depth chart. And so they were telling us this depth chart isn't set in stone. We just need looks and pretty much just having people out there just to see what they have. So normally when you're giving people looks, you rotate guys on first team, you rotate guys on second team and third team, just to give different looks to see like how a player is going to react to having different individuals in front of them, and to see and to evaluate at the end of the day. When I first got there, instantly I was on like third team. And then even on special teams, I was probably like on 4th and 15. I'm like, bro, what is this? And so I was talking to my roommate about this, and it's crazy because he was saying we're supposed to be rotating, but we're not. And every other position group was doing that. As far as D-line, the defensive backs, I don't know if the running backs or the quarterbacks or anybody on the offensive side was doing it, but we were definitely doing it on defense. And linebackers were the only group that wasn't rotating. Yeah, man, I stayed on third team for 2 weeks. And it's like I didn't really get an opportunity to really show what I could do. And I was already learning a completely different defense. The style of play in their defense, it's nothing different from a regular NFL defense, but they changed the names of certain players within the defense. So for me, it was confusing, and I don't feel like it should ever be like that, especially like whenever you're playing a straightforward NFL defense, because they can't make it too difficult because their guys need to learn how to play in order to get on the field and play freely and actually play their best. So whenever I was there, not only was I like on the 3rd and 4th and 15, I had to go again. It wasn't like I was going against guys that was just coming into the system and knew or was going to be learning the playbook the same playbook I was going against guys that was in this league on this team with this defense coordinator for 2 and 3 years. So I'm like, of course I'm going to be looking like slow. Of course it's going to look like I'm overthinking every play because I'm learning, and it's only 2 weeks. And yeah, the guy that was pretty much next to me, he was already on the team for 2 years. The guy that was on second team, I think he was here for 2 years. And the two guys that was pretty much starting, they were here for 3 years. So I'm just like, where do I fit at in this situation? Towards the end of that, man, it was we had a so-called scrimmage, and it was supposed to last for probably an hour 15, hour and 30 minutes. And we ended up cutting it short, and I only got 4 plays that entire scrimmage. So we're all supposed to have a certain amount of plays. And we ended up cutting the scrimmage short because a guy ended up getting a concussion, and it was crazy. He was laid out on the field and his arm was stretched out to the sky, and I've never seen nothing like that in person. Yeah, we cut the scrimmage short, and that was a Saturday, and then the next Sunday or that following day, they ended up starting to make their cuts. And I was like, thinking to myself, I was like, man, this entire time I've been here, I've never really got like a fair look. And then even during the scrimmage, I only got like 4 plays. So what does this mean for me? So I woke up the next day, ended up getting the call that I was released. And so I'm thinking to myself, I was like, man, I could have because before I was in Alabama, I was doing my training there. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, dang, man, that only lasted 2 weeks, not even a month. I can see if it was a month, maybe even 2 months, but 2 weeks? You can't evaluate somebody in 2 weeks. But they pretty much already knew who they wanted on the team. And I have no doubt in my mind that was something that I had to go through for whatever reason. I don't know why God wanted me there or why I had to experience that. But for me, I know it wasn't no wasted time. Even though in my head I'm thinking that it was something that God wanted me to do there or whatever to be able to be where I am today. It was a crazy situation, but I'm not down in the dumps. As far as like my plan now, I was just planning on going back to school, finish out my training, and go from there. That's all I can do at this point. But me and my agent are pretty much going to put our heads together and shoot for the stars, really. Like, I do want to get an opportunity to get back in the NFL, and I know I can get that opportunity. But I know they also want to see what they want to see, so I'm not going to go there half-assed and pretty much expect a good outcome. But that's where we are right now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And then for other people that have had severe injuries, I was wondering if maybe you could describe like how your knee was, but after when you're having the 60 cc's drawn out of it, like how did you feel? What was it like every day with that? And then how does it feel now after the regenerative therapy?
Yeah, man. I not only was feeling that, I was feeling that during school, but I was also feeling it afterwards. But during school, I was walking, I was limping around all the time. I was in pain, man. Like, when I tell you that was the most pain I've ever felt in my entire life, and it trumps everything because it would wake me out my sleep. If I was sleeping on my side in the bed or on my back and the blankets just tugged a little bit on my knee, it would wake me up out my sleep. That's how painful it was. And it almost was like a shard of glass was being stabbed into my knee with every step that I took. And it was gut-wrenching, man. I remember just resenting everyone. I remember my trainers kept telling me at the time, they were like, Dylan, stop limping. Dylan, stop limping. Because normally they say that limping is a psychological thing, like you're telling yourself to limp because you're thinking it's painful. But in my reality, it really was. So I just remember going through that, and I just felt like I didn't have anyone to really go to. And when I think back on it, I think to myself, like, dang, man, I should have went and got a second opinion. And I was talking to my girlfriend about this. I was just like, throughout my entire life, I always had someone over my shoulder telling me what to do. And I never really took my life into my own hands. Of course, I was by myself in college and I did that. And I was even by myself in high school, like my senior year. But like I said, I still always had that voice of reason from either both my parents or just someone that cared. And I remember that year, I didn't get that. I was talking to my pops, and he even had his own fair share of knee injuries. And I told him, and I was like, man, I don't know how much more I can take of this. Like, my knee is terrible right now. I've never felt like this. I'm in pain. And he just basically told me to keep playing. Like, he never told me to get a second look, never told me to sit down. And I felt bad at that moment because that's not what I wanted to hear. I was like, man, if he would have told me to sit down or told me to go get a second opinion, it wasn't nothing at school, nothing that Alabama could have told me that was going to make me do what they said do, because the person that's been training me my entire life told me, like, man, look, something is wrong with you. You need to go get looked at. And so when that didn't cross his mouth, I told my mom, and I remember she didn't really give her input. Like, she was afraid on giving her own input. So she told the guy that I was looking to be my agent at the time what I was feeling. And because I was telling him, like, I don't think I could play in the SEC championship game. I was like, man, I didn't play the entire season. We made this far. Like, I cannot do this no more. Like, I'm in pain. And I just remember them saying, if you stop now, it's just going to look bad in the eyes of NFL teams. Like, you've been with your team this entire year. Now you get to the championships and you don't play. Like, it's going to make a bad rep. And I'm like, dang, man, it's really nothing I could do. And it's almost, I really had wanted to just walk away, just quit. And I'm not the type of person to just quit, but if I don't see no light in the situation, and if I'm literally my back against the wall and everybody basically against me, it's like they don't understand. They don't know what I'm going through. And so is it me going to go against myself and just do this to make everyone else happy, or basically just quit? And so I just went ahead and finished the season. We won a natty, and still I got a bad rep. People saying that I wasn't focused or my head was someplace else. And I don't know, man, it was the worst. It was crazy. And I've never had people demonize my character in that way because I always try to stand up guy, did what I was told to do or did what I was supposed to, worked hard, and I led by example. For me, that was just, it was painful. And anybody else that is going through that type of trauma or pain, even if you're in college, I don't expect someone in the NFL to, because you're your own business. So you have to go and you have to get a second opinion on that level. But in college, I would not let any of those trainers or coaches or even team doctors tell me what I'm feeling when I know I'm feeling completely different. Like, you have to get a second look. Go and get a second look, because sometimes you're going to be the only person looking out for you in your best interest. So
I think that's a huge thing, Dylan, and you're exactly right, because I see that all the time, not only with athletes, but even in just normal mainstream medicine, where just recently we had a patient who was ignored by their doctor, and they didn't want to order an MRI for this person. Their insurance covered it, but they didn't want to order it for whatever reason. We ordered MRI, came back, there's a really serious issue that had to be taken care of. But so often people are just happy to turn the blind eye. And the thing is, I don't think anybody there realized, but what you described was the pain of walking on a joint that has no cartilage. Nobody, like, the pain of that is 10 out of 10.
Oh yeah, it is.
When we talked about having the glass in your joint and feeling like it, each step you're literally just tearing. And so nobody can understand that except for you. And I wish we could go back in time and I could find you and be like, hey, let's look at this together. Because the fact that when you went to Andrews, you're like, hey, you have no cartilage. That was probably what was happening then, is your cartilage was literally falling off. And like that, I applaud you for that, because that is the level of pain you had to go through to continue to participate, and at the same time listen to people basically people who don't know you telling you that your character is weak.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They have no right. They don't even know anything about you.
Like, so, I've heard it all, man. Trust me. And it was, what's the best word for it? It was definitely angering. Like, it angered me a lot, because if you have someone in front of you that's telling you, even like whether it's a scout or a coach or whatever, and they're trying to tell you about who you are when they haven't even known you, much less been through a season with you, or even just been around you to even know, and they're just picking up pieces of what they see on film or picking up pieces of what they see, I don't know, wherever else, or what someone else has told them. I don't know what someone else could tell people or tell them for them to think they know me. But yeah, that really just, it angered me. But at the same time, all I can do is continue pushing forward. As far as what I'm dealing with right now, like I said, I've had a lot of tough moments over the past 2 years, had my back up against the wall. It even been in situations where I didn't know how something was going to turn out or what my life was going to be like. And each and every time I've been in that situation, God always made a way for me. And throughout the time period of me like taking a risk and moving to Dallas and being here, I feel like I've been guided this entire time to be at the right place at the right time in each and every scenario I've been in. And whether I understand it or not, it's not for me to, but for me to trust and for me to have faith that everything is working out for its best. But my goal is to ultimately get back to playing in the NFL again, wherever that route takes me, as far as getting back to that point. And then just building from there and being able to look back and pull people up that has been through what I've been through or is currently going through it and needs some type of help, because I was at a point where I didn't know if there was somebody that was going through what I was going through, or if there was a David out there that can heal my knee. I was talking to my trainers at the Jaguars. They was like, I was asking him, I was like, is there anything to grow your meniscus back? He was like, I don't know. I'm sure there is, but that's not something that'll come out probably like later on, like several years from now or whatever. They're still trying to master it. And I'm like, man, ain't no way. But yeah, so that kind of had crushed my hope at the time. But yeah, like seeing where my life is today and being connected with David and knowing how big this is going to be, because I was talking to him a few days ago and I was like, David, whenever I started working with you, that was the beginning of everything, right? Like that was the very threshold you were crossing as far as like getting into the athletic world, working with athletes and being able to help me regenerate myself. And he was like, yeah, pretty much. Like, I've given people injections for a while and working with people for a while, but as far as basically creating the product that he has, so it was fairly recent when he finally got it to the point where it was perfected. And I was like, wow. So I'm basically looking at, what's the guy from Amazon? Shoot.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, I'm looking at Jeff Bezos before Jeff Bezos, or the guy from Facebook. Yeah, like these guys, they had a life before they were billionaires. They were probably ripping and running. I don't know if you saw the guy's movie from that created Facebook on Netflix or whatever, but I watched this movie and it was like, it's crazy seeing that he was just a college student and he was trying to perfect Facebook, and he ended up building that and becoming a multi-billionaire type of guy. And I'm like, looking at David, I had to tell him, I was like, man, I don't think you know this or not, but you are real special. Like, I know special people when I see them. And I was like, you are definitely one of them. And seeing you as busy as you are, ripping and running the streets, you're doing conference calls and helping me out, and then flying across the country to have meetings and flying to China and Mexico. I'm like, you are going to be something big in this world. You're going to leave your mark. And I'm just grateful that I met you and that I'm on the same path as you. And I can't even put into words like how proud I am of him. Even though we're not where we want to be, we're so far ahead of 2 years ago, or even before I met him. And it's grown and it's getting better and better. But yeah, like this for athletes and just people in general is definitely gonna help the world.
Yeah, the technology that was used on you was something called a placenta derived protein array, or PDPA for short.
Yeah.
And that technology is what I've seen just in my practice is like the strongest technology that's out there for regenerative medicine. And just like you've witnessed, that we were able to essentially recover a knee that didn't have any cartilage. So there's a lot of people that can benefit from that. If you were talking to a younger version of yourself, besides getting the second opinion and always making sure that you at least get two opinions, make sure you put yourself first. If someone was considering regenerative medicine using a technology like the PDPAs, what would you tell them?
If I were going to tell them something about the medicine, I'd say that you have to work with it. It's not something that it's like a overnight pill that you take and it's just going to fix everything. It works in time. So when I first started using the regenerative medicine myself, the very first thing I started noticing was a speed in recovery as far as healing. Like if I had a cut or a bruise or something, like it would heal quicker than it would had I not had the medicine in my system. And I noticed that within a month. As far as long term, you'd have to work with it as far as being in therapy or being in a gym, whatever the case may be that you're working around to get back to your normal health. It's a system that works within a system. So like your body is its own system, but this medicine is a system within itself that comes into your body and pretty much recreates it in a way that it makes you stronger, more healthy. What else? And it does add more years to your life. I haven't been able to experience that on my own because I've only been using it for a few years now, but it has made a change on my health in a spectacular way. I'm just blessed to be able to use it. But what I will say is you can't have the mindset of thinking that it's going to happen overnight. Like this is something that as it gets in your system and it pretty much gets in your DNA, you have to continue working with it over time, and then your body will soon catch up with it, and then it'll be like a rhythm in a sense. Yeah.
That's great advice. Awesome, Dylan. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. If someone wants to follow you and follow your journey, what's the best way for someone to seek you out and follow you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And my Instagram is Dylan D. Moses, DYLAN DMOSES. So you can reach me at that. That's pretty much the only social media tag that I have. But besides that, I'm happy to be here today. I'm grateful to be able to tell you my story and also be able to help the next person that is in my position or needs help or needs to know what's the next steps in their own journey. So yeah, I'm just glad to be here.
We're very glad to have you. Thank you.